Hello there, everybody. It's Eternal Snowman here with another episode of BLT Recap and Highlights. And in fact, it's going to be the final recap and highlights video covering the entire finals, including the tiebreaker. And at the very end, I'm going to be giving my thoughts on BLT as a whole and my experience with it. So, if you are interested in that, I'll leave a timestamp in the description just for people who just want to hear about that. And I'll also leave a timestamp for when I start talking about the tiebreaker. So I'll go through the matches like I always do in order, and I'll talk about each one and pretty much just go through them pretty quickly. Um, and then yeah, so the two matches I won't be going over will be my own two matches. My Uber's match, which I went over like 2 weeks ago or something like that, and then the tiebreak match that I just came out with like 2 days ago. And I'll leave both of those in the iCard and as well as the description. So if you're interested, go check those out. But we'll go ahead and get into the matches. So the first match was Mikav versus Ninja Dog YLC match. Both players are pretty good. Ninja Dog would be favored historically over Mikav. Mikav has been having a very good tournament. Ninja Dog as well, for the most part, has also been having a pretty good tournament. But yeah, we can just head right into the match. And I believe, yeah, that's right here. So for matchup, Ninja Dog has an Abra offense team with Double Steel, Fungus, and Volibee. On the other side, Mikav has Diglett, so depending on what sets everyone is running, Diglett could have a very good matchup. Um, and Abra as well could potentially have a good matchup, but also could potentially have a bad matchup. And then the Tortuga is pretty good here as well. So we can already know this is Rock's Pawn, most likely Eviolite, some sort of berry juice set. It could also be Scarf, but it's more likely to be Scarf Mag. So we could just get into the replay. We lead with the Foo Dittos. He goes for Fake Out and gets either the tie or whatever it was, but Ninja Dog goes for the knockoff on the knockoff trade. And then he goes into Volibee to get the berry juice boost, but is forced out by the Tortuga as they believe they trade rocks here. Oh, actually, no. Ninja goes for rocks on the Poniard knock, and then he goes into his Mianfu to absorb the knockoff because its item was already gone. Mikab unfortunately misses high jump kick there. Um, and then Ninja Dog goes for the high jump kick, doesn't kill the Volibee, procs the berry juice, and then he goes into his Poniard, which is trapped. Um, he lives the Sucker Punch. It's a roll in Mikau's favor there. Um, and then he goes into the Tortuga, Fake Out, um, easily walls the Meowth because Tortuga is really bulky. Goes into the Volibee, which reveals a Berry Juice Defog, and now rocks are off the field permanently. Volibee gets its Berry Juice knocked on, and then Ninja Dog goes for knockoff. I assume he was predicting the Tortuga, but does not get that prediction correct. Goes for the Brave Bird, and then the Hidden Power, which doesn't finish off Tortuga, but the next turn it gets finished off with a knockoff, I believe, yes. And so he goes into Mianfu, which has Fake Out here, and so Ninja Dog just pivots out to save the Volibee for being a death fodder later on in the game. Gets the Flash Cannon after revealing most likely to be Scarf. Um, Goes Fungus, and it takes a lot of damage from the almost dead Diglett, but managed to kill it off. Goes into the Volibee, and this is where Ninja Dog uses his free switch out and goes into his Magnemite, clicks Volt Switch, I believe, yeah, because no immunities on the other side. Goes into his Meowth, and then Mikav, knowing that, sacks his Volibee here because Meowth has Faint here, so sacks his Volibee, or actually, no, he doesn't. Yeah, he actually keeps the Volibee around for a sack later on. And then Ninja Dog goes into his Mianfu, um, to absorb the sleep. But here he pivots around the knockoff and then goes into his Abra. And the Magnemite is the switch in. I believe that's actually a pretty big misplay. Ends up being Scarf. Yeah. And then Ninja Dog not misplays, but Ninja Dog doesn't predict correctly with the fake out versus double edge, or like, I don't really know what the 50-50 was there, but it's likely to be inner focus, so I don't really know if he had a chance to win here. I guess if he fake outed, then there's a chance where Mianfu could kill with fake out, but yeah. So that was it. Yep, inner focus Abra manages to clean up with the Scarf. And that ends up being a pretty good game, but puts the Weaviles ahead 1-0. Game 2 was my game versus Raftel Reshrooms, which ended up being a close game. I technically won because he missed P-Blades in the end game, but at the same time he got a Dark Pulse flinch pretty early on. That was pretty influential, so I think that like trades about equally. And then we head into the third match, which was Skilos versus Sanjay. This is game 3. Skilos brought a kind of weird team. This could be a lot of different things. It could be like a semi-stall with Regice. Could also be like an offensive team. I'm inclined to believe it's more of a stally team because of the Quagsire and double ground type that you normally wouldn't see on a normal build. Sanjay brings a balanced team that's focused around Spexel and Executor. He leads with Ilul and Executor because it's quite threatening. Skilos leads with the Regice, which is pretty safe. It could have potentially, because most likely Sanjay was going to lead Dredigan or Executor, and then it scouts out the leftovers, so this knows that Sanjay knows that at this point it's most likely to be stall. Goes for the Ice Beam. The Silvally is pretty bulky. It doesn't take much at all from it. Because of the degenerate interaction, the Xatu actually gets bounced back and he essentially gets a free pivot. Goes into the Incineroar predicting the Xatu, which was a correct prediction. Goes for the knockoff, I believe, yes. Goes for the knockoff, which is safe. Item is important on the stall. Goes into his Persimmon and gets Dragon-tailed out. And he goes back to the Silvally. And then goes into the Incineroar as the switch into Xatu. Gets U-turned on. And Sanjay also goes for the U-turn, which is pretty safe. Goes into the Persimmon, which also goes for the U-turn, I believe. Yes, because it's safe. And he gets to bring in the Alolan Executor finally. And he goes for the Draco here. I believe that was predicting the Guzzlord, or just going for the strong attack. Pivots out into his Silvally, and then doubles into the Incineroar, predicting the Xatu, which he's given his right. Goes for the knockoff, I believe. No, goes for the U-turn on the Aerodactyl, which goes into the Persimmon, which goes for the U-turn. Pretty safe. Goes back to the Incineroar. I believe he goes for the knockoff here. No, U-turn again. Just clicking only U-turn. Clicks U-turn again, and Skilos sacks the Guzzlord to preserve momentum there because his momentum was seriously lacking. Goes to his Regice, and as the Silvally is getting pretty low, goes again to the Incineroar on the predicted Xatu, which was pretty safe. Gets U-turned on again. He goes for the U-turn. Goes into his Alolan Executor, which is pretty threatening at this point. Skilos goes back into his Regice, but eats a Flamethrower for his trouble. And he has to go out into his Slowbro. Also covers the potential Aerodactyl switch, which he gets. He goes back to the Silvally, predicting the Regice, I believe. Goes for the multi-attack, which is predicting the double to Incineroar. Sorry, predicting him to predict the double to Incineroar, which he does get. Then gets the Alolan Executor back in, and it's extremely good at this point with Regice now down. And goes into his Slowbro, which he just go ahead. Oh no, actually he gives up the Incineroar. And then knocks off the Choice Band Aerodactyl, and that's game. Because at that point, then you just bring in the whatchamacallit, Executor, and then it just like clicks buttons and wins. So that was a pretty solid win for Sanjay. Another win for him after a good season in NU. And we head into the next match, up 2-1, which was doubles. So from team preview, they look kind of similar teams. Genesect is the X factor on this team, also with Suicune, because that means that Leo will likely have the advantage in terms of speed control because of Suicune, and Silver has a relatively standard balance lineup with Amoonguss as the X factor. If Amoonguss can pull off like the shenanigans, then it could be game changing. They both are bringing the Clanger, Clanger Gar Incineroar combo that is pretty popular right now, because Incineroar is one of the best mons to pair with Gengar, just because of how team builds function. You want to have this Intimidate user on every team. Incineroar functions very well with Gengar. So as we always see with Gengar builds, you generally want to lead Gengar to get an advantage, get the early trapping going. Silver I believe it's better to actually lead Gar even in the Gar Dittos, in my opinion, even though it's like quote unquote risking a tie. But you can see here that you put a lot more pressure if you do it this way, because of how Gar Dittos work, or just like in general how Gengar works. It just makes you have a lot more pressure if you have the Gengar on the field. Yeah, so you kind of just see that King Leo's getting every prediction correct. The interaction earlier with the Bulu not getting affected by the Rage Powder is pretty interesting as well. And we see Lele's Scarf getting knocked off, which is pretty big deal, because that means then it's trapped by Gengar. And at this point, like, it's already so hard for Silver to come back, especially here with the Lele not being able to finish off the Incineroar with Focus Blast, meaning that he actually gives up the Lele. And he only is able to get in Gengar here, which is really, really late. And the Rage Powder was also blocked by the Bulu. This is predicting him to try to go for the speed tie, which he was wrong on the prediction for. And then he predicts him to do that again, but once again, he doesn't do it. Yeah, if he got a couple of these predictions right, these 50-50s, it was still possible for him to win this game, but it ended up being impossible. And then here, the Soundproof Como actually blocks the opposing Como, so you actually don't get the boost. And this is like a very rare circumstance in doubles where you actually don't see the opposing Como or like a Como get the boost, which is it's very, very rare that happens, because of like it goes through Protect, so you need to have 2 Mons immune to it, and generally you don't carry 2 Fairy types. So this is like one of the only scenarios that you will ever see, which is Soundproof plus Soundproof plus a Fairy type. And at this point the game's over, because yeah, without the boost, Como can't do anything. So yeah. GG's. That was well played by King Leo, and they managed to pick up the second win for them, bringing the series to 2-2 heading into the midway point. And the next match here was
the OU match between Kyotoshi and Le Sabre. This is actually a pretty unfortunate matchup just to begin with because Kyotoshi, like we went over when we were building together, we had gone over the fact that this team could potentially be pretty weak to stall because it has an inability to break the Mega Sableye Chansey plus Clefable core. But we do still have playing room with Life Orb, Kyurem, and specifically against this team, Magnezone is pretty good. So goes into the Tapu Fini just as a good anti-lead against Sableye. Goes to the Nature's Madness on the knockoff, and goes for the Nature's Madness again. Goes into his Kyurem. Kyurem going to be the main way to pressure on this team. The Fusion Ball actually only doing 18 to Avalugg. And then you could just kind of see some pivoting around. I'm just going to try to go through this game a little bit faster just because it's probably going to take a while if I go through it slow because, you know, stall matchups and everything. Having Roost Kyurem is pretty decent here because it gives him a decent way to pressure. But the problem is it doesn't break past Chansey. And then you see the Moltres pressuring a decent amount because no leftovers on the other Mon. I think he burns the Z move a little bit too fast there. You probably want to save it for later. Here, the reason why you see him recover every time is to return every time without megaing is he was predicting the avalanche, but I think that was kind of a misplay. He used the pincer too fast. He then traps the Ferrothorn and gets the kill there. Gets the Avalugg as well with the Landorus. But the issue is still that Chansey is really difficult to kill here. And we don't really get enough flinches. Like, that was really unfortunate. If we got a few more flinches, then this game would have been possible. But the Jirachi was, like, the Chansey was near impossible to break because our best way of breaking it was, like, Jirachi. I do think that Kyotoshi could have saved the pincer for later, but it was already a tough matchup, and he was just trying to get muscle through some of the answers. So that was that game. And we go into after game 5, it's 3-2 in their favor. So heading into game 6, which is the UU game. No, sorry, this is the RU game. I have them out of order. This is actually Ark's first match that actually matters, and it was against Negatory, the opposing captain, and this game would pretty much be a pivotal moment because if we don't win this game, it's going to be pretty hard for us to come back in the series. So we go lead with Virizion, go for the Swords Dance, which is pretty safe because Ice Beam still doesn't kill. Actually, not even close. Goes for the Bloom Doom. This is, I believe, going for the offensive one, but also to potentially hit something on the switch. He goes for Drapion. Doubles to Rhyperior. Then he gets the extremely awesome tech of having Protect, which helps him a lot. It's Protect dual stab, I assume. It helps him a ton because essentially it scouts Scarf Drapion, or just generally Scarfers. They will have to choose to pick a move to hit Virizion, and then if they they say they pick Pursuit, then you can just stay in, right? But essentially it makes it so it eliminates the 50-50 possibility. It then creates a different possibility of like whether or not they're going to double after they see that Protect, right? But like it's a little bit more difficult and more in your favor in that scenario. He gets then the kill on Rhyperior because of that. Gets the Protect again, and gets the switch out into Gligar, and he's always going to be a favorite in those matchups. Goes for the U-turn, which is preserves momentum, and goes into his Rotom, which he actually Volt switches, predicting the switch, and goes into his Porygon, which he just uses to threaten the Shaman a bit. and Negatory is forced out. Snorlax, and he goes into the Rotom and threatens the trick, which he goes for, and that means that Lax is pretty much screwed. Gets the Volt Switch on the Shaman, forces out the Shaman with the Virizion, and then he goes into the Shaman on the switch to Rotom, which he predicts the Shaman switch in here. This is what I was talking about before. It creates a 50-50 between whether or not he's going to what he's going to double to at that point. So he actually gets a relatively favorable matchup no matter what. Even if he stayed in and poison jabbed again, Rotom could still take it and wouldn't put him in a terrible spot. But if he did go into Shaman, predicting the Gligar, then this would actually put him in a really favorable spot. So Arc scouts that out, goes into his Rotom, and then Volt switches out and goes into the Steelix. And that point, there is nothing that Lightning can do. And that's a GG. Very much like a hugely one-sided match in this one. Well prepped and well played by Arc, essentially. Then heading into the 7th match, it was Keeping It Icy, who was, I believe, undefeated coming into this, versus Jordan, who is one of the better players in the tour and one of the clutch players as well, having won the tiebreak last time for his team. And then so Suicune is a really good mon versus Jordan. As you can see, he doesn't really have a good answer to Suicune. And it's sub-toxic, which is extremely good. He gets the first turn Scald Burn, which is pretty lucky, and then goes for the Toxic on the Latias. He predicts the switch to Amoonguss, or at least goes for Psychic as a safe play, gets the Amoonguss kill, goes into his Empoleon to clear the webs, gets the Aqua Jet down, which is the tech of Defiant plus Aqua Jet, and gets the Latias kill. Because of that, it goes into his Mamoswine, which goes for the freeze drive, but because it's not because it's not specially attack invested, it actually doesn't end up mattering that much. Doesn't do a ton of damage. The Scald doesn't go through after the Air Shard, but yeah, the Suicune just puts in so much work and it's forced to do. It essentially got 3 kills here. It gets the kill on Mamo, gets the kill on Koba, heavily weakens the Houndoom and Toxic to the Latias, so it's just so threatening there. Then he goes into the Rotom Heat, just safe play, goes for the knockoff, which gets the leftovers, meaning defensive Rotom. And I believe, he goes for the overheat, and then Volt switches out into the return from the Altaria, and gets the quick attack down, which is the tech, and then he gets the bullet punch down, which he goes for the earthquake on, and then he goes for the heal bell here and kills off the Araquanid and finishes off the Houndoom after. So 4-3 in our favor heading into the very last match, which was Mono, the tier that I have been plagued with, and I do not agree with it being in BLT, but I'll give my thoughts on that at the end. So the last matchup here is Steel versus Dark. I don't really know how Mono matchups go other than the ones that are really obvious, or the ones that I've played. Dark and Steel are both monos I have not really played before, so I don't really know how this matchup goes, but let's just watch the replay. The Sableye is a decent lead on any, it's a good lead on any team that uses Sableye. It goes to the Lava Plume, and then Kyther goes for the knockoff, gets in the Excadrill's Scarf, goes for the Protect. Again, just scouting what it's going to do, goes to the knockoff, and he's willing to trade Sableye's, willing to let Sableye get burned for knocking Heatran because he thinks Heatran's a troublesome mon in this matchup. Goes to the taunt, and switches into Mandy. Mandy being used to pressure here, and this is kind of like a Staldy-ish team. The Tyranitar goes for the Stone Edge, and he doesn't really have a solid answer to Excadrill, which is a potential problem, especially with it getting flinched, with the Mandibus being flinched. I think he kind of forgot that it had Mold Breaker, honestly, right there. But he didn't really have that much he could do. Goes into the Sableye, just goes ahead and recovers, goes into the Muck, which has Iapapa, roosts with Hydreigon, gets Toxic, pretty bad. Goes into the Tyranitar, which is, I believe, Toxic. Toxic Protect, probably. And he's just trying to pressure here with stuff. Doesn't want to let the Excadrill in. U-turns out, gets the Roost on Mandibuzz at the cost of Toxic. It's just pivoting around, going for the Iron Head on the Stealth Rocks. Goes for the Rapid Spin, which he uses to get in Greninja. Just trying to recover all the Mons. Recover. Goes into the Muck to get the recovery. Peachy Clouds gets the knock on the Mandibuzz. U-turns around, just trying to get recovery once again. Goes into the Greninja. And he plays the 50-50 game with HP Fire, but he doesn't get it correct. Yeah, and then he just loses to the Scizor because he missed that one 50-50. If he had gone for that 50-50 and got the HP Fire, it's possible that he could have been in a much better position, but we'll never know. So, because of that, with Peachy Clouds winning and Kyther losing, it actually puts us in the tiebreak scenario, and after a relatively long period of time where both managers didn't really, it took a while to pick the tiers, we ended up getting Ubers, which I played, OU, and another OU. How it works as tiebreaks, you get one guaranteed OU, and then you get, each team picks one tier. We picked Ubers, they picked OU. Ubers, I believed, was our strongest, not necessarily objectively strongest, although you could argue that could be the case. I believe that it was our strongest disparity, as they had no one who was even close to my level in Ubers, in my opinion. And so we were going into this tiebreak relatively confident because we had two favored matchups, and then one was like a close matchup. I would say Jordan is slightly favored over Sanjay, but it's not so much that it's impossible. So the first matchup actually ended up being Sanjay versus Jordan, which is right here. And this was a must-win game for Jordan because if they did lose, then there's no way that they were going to come back. In fact, both of their OU games were pretty much must-win, as I think that the Ubers one was really heavily in my favor. Oh, okay. Just from matchup, the Huron is a huge threat with no answers whatsoever on Sanjay's team, and this Chansey offense team, as it were, is relatively hard to deal with in general because of the ability to pivot around and get the Huron back in. Lele is the only real answer, but it's an offensive answer, not a defensive one. And if Sanjay doesn't guess correctly every time, then it's going to be really hard to pressure with it. He goes into the Torn, which is pretty safe, and goes for the knockoff, which gets nothing, meaning that it's Mega Slowbro, which makes sense. It was either going to be Mega T-Tar or Mega Slowbro. Mega Slowbro makes sense. Goes for the Scald on the Bulu, doesn't get the burn, which is pretty good. It's leftovers Bulu, so that is a potential threat to Jordan's team. Goes for the Superpower, predicting the Tran. I believe he was, well, he went Lando just as a solid pivot. It's also like a good idea just because if he had gone for, like, say, Swords Dance or something, it would have been much safer. Goes into the Mawile as though it doesn't even really check Huron here. See, the Ice Beam does that much, 50%. And then he just wants to pivot around to potentially get in Lele, but he eats the Sub-Zero Slammer. Oh, oops. And at this point, the game is pretty much over because he has no way of beating the Kyurem. It just clicks buttons. He wanted to try to go for the Swords Dance to at least pressure here, but there was nothing he can do. And you see the forfeit because you can just see at this point that the game's already over. Because Bueller no longer is able to take an Ice Beam, everything else is O-code, or either O-code, O-code by either Ice Beam or Earth Power, or at least killed from that range. So the game's already over at this point. Hiramo just click buttons and the game will end in like 22 turns or something around those lines. There's no real point in dragging it out. So that's 1-0 for the Weaviles, and they're in the lead. And this was actually like I was sweating a little bit here because I would be really unhappy if we managed to get to the finals in a BLT where we drafted like amazingly, got great subs, we got essentially everything that we could have wanted went in our way, and we lose to the Weaviles in the finals, who I believed were the worst team heading into this BLT. So I really feel like this was like getting it even this close, even though we were still favored in our last two matches. Even getting it this close was too much for me. Not too much, but it got me sweating at least. So the last match that I'm going to be going over is Mysterious M versus Le Sabreur. And I'll preface this by saying that this was a must-win match for them because I had pretty much I had a lockdown on the last game. So while it's not the stakes of that last game, because it's technically only match point for them and not for us, it was unlikely that they were going to be able to bring back the Ubers game. Granted, it was pretty unlikely that they were going to win this OU game as well because Mysterious M is a better player than Le Sabreur by like a good margin, but it's more likely, I feel like, here. And we can even see this because Le Sabreur here has a pretty good matchup, just compared with the Heatran and the here we can just watch how it plays out with the Heatran and the Scizor and the Torn. So he leads well up for the Heatran, and Mysterious M pivots into the Tangrowth, knowing that his opponent's going to go for the Gastrodon, and just reads every single play from these first couple turns, knocks the Torn, goes into his own Torn to provide chip with Rocky Helmet, and then gets the no, he goes for U-turn there, and goes into his own Tran, and goes for the Earth Power, which he goes into Gastro for. Goes into the Tornadus, as they both go into Tornadus, and goes for the Defog first, I believe, yes. And then U-turns out, going into the Tangrowth. This is such a ballsy play. He knows he's going to Stealth Rock, so he goes into the Tangrowth because it's an Assault Vest set with Earthquake. And then he pivots into Heatran on the Weavile, and then goes for Stealth Rocks, which is pretty fucking smart. Goes into his his Tornadus on the Toxic. I believe he then goes for knockoff here, or U-turn. No, Hurricane, predicting the Tornadus, which is pretty smart as well. And then goes for the U-turn after, I believe, yes. You see like Mysterious M just outplaying almost every single turn, knowing what his opponent's going to do. Goes for the Giga Drain here, yeah. He unfortunately does not have HP Fire, so he goes into his Landorus. As you see, Le Sabreur actually scout that out. It goes for the Stone Edge, which Le Sabreur scouts out with his Reuni switch. Goes for the Thunder, which gets avoided. Gets the Thunder Punch, which was pretty lucky to para, because if it didn't para, then Heatran would be a massive threat. But he gives up the Tornadus here, which is no longer necessary. It would have helped to check Gastro, but at that point it's not necessary. Goes for the Toxic and hits the Gastro, which is pretty important here. Goes into the Tangrowth now that it's the last thing that needs to be pressured. Goes into Heatran, predicting the Tornadus. And on the U-turn he goes for Magnastorm, I believe. Yeah, he goes for the Magma Storm, and then goes into Tangrowth on the recover. Predicts the Tornadus and goes for Hidden Power Ice. Not wanting to give up his Tornadus, he goes into his Scizor. Goes for the Earthquake. Doesn't really do as much to Scizor as he probably wanted it to. And then he goes into his Tran and then goes into Mawile, predicting the Gastrodon. And you see here like where the matchup comes into play. He has answers to every single one of the offensive threat Mysterious M has. So because his Mawile is answered by the Scizor and his Heatran answered by the Gastrodon, so you can just pivot between those. And then the Tangrowth answered by the Tornadus to potentially give recovery as well. And then he goes for the Play Rough, gets a relatively lucky crit. It doesn't matter too much because I believe he risked here, yeah, but goes into the Tran, which just gets recovery every turn it's in. It pretty much negates Stealth Rocks by the fact that leftovers plus with leftovers. Goes into his Tangrowth, goes back to his Tran, just sees him pivoting around, and Mysterious M is going to be the one who's pressured to break the cycle, and he goes into his Greninja, and he reveals Scarf HP Fire, which is super amazing. He manages to break the cycle somehow. Now, in part, I think that the Sabrera was to blame here because if you think about it this way, as Mysterious M, he has a purpose to doing everything, right? So if you pivot into Greninja predicting the Scizor, there's a reason why it must be done that way, right? So he wants something to be done there, and so he should have tried to at least scout for something on Greninja's side. Obviously, he could have been bluffing to try to break this cycle, and but it's just like not a good idea to just stay in like that. And so he go with his Greninja, he gets knocked off. Actually, it wasn't Scarf. I actually don't know what item it was. Maybe E-Belt? I'm not too sure, but he predicts the pursuit and then goes, gives up the Greninja, but he gets the free Mawile, and the Mawile gets a Swords Dance, which I believe cleans up the game from here, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, it cleans up the game from here. So Mysterious M picks up that win, and that puts us puts us to a 1-1 position with me being the last game, and I finish off TR Hurricane for the very last game and make us BLT winners. So first off, congrats to every Snorlax player, and thanks for being on my team. And it was a great season in general. I loved it, and it was very fun to play. Oh yeah, this replay is private, but you know, videos, and it's important for me to go through all the replays. So with that, we won BLT, pretty great BLT season. I'll go through a couple things I really liked and then I really didn't like about this. First off, I really liked the experience of being a manager, being a player again for another season, and it was very enjoyable. There were definitely things that I didn't like about it though. So first off, the things that I'll just go through the things I didn't like first, and then I'll go through all the positives. And thanks for all the people that went through it. So first off, I didn't like that it was a short BLT season. Short BLT, although it did end up being kind of long at the end because of tiebreakers and everything. Short BLT season, I think, kind of sucks. It has a lot higher variance. So, for example, the Bolts lost their first 2 weeks and then they were out of the tournament, even though they were potentially the best team. They didn't really have the opportunity, like only having the first 2 weeks are as must-win weeks. Like week 2 for them was a must-win week already, which is pretty bad. Since a lot of teams they need time to gel, time and whatever. Our team hit the ground running pretty fast, and so we didn't really have those sort of issues. But there were teams like that, like in the bracket, and I felt bad for them having like a 5-week group stage or a 7-week group stage or whatever else. It removes this sort of variance because you at least will have the opportunity to play everyone else. And so even if you have like a 1 week bad start or whatever, then you can still bounce back. The other thing I didn't like was having mono in here when we had other options, like namely PU was the one. Like at least last BLT, there's a reason as to why, like I believe NU wasn't included or PU wasn't included. I believe it was NU, and that was because like tier usage hadn't come out yet. So like it would have been like in beta. So like yeah, sure, that makes sense. But the issue with this BLT is like not having PU was so like PU is like a tier that's already on the come up, and I feel like mono, especially BO1 mono, was so uncompetitive, and we had not only an underrepresented pool because not really many good mono players were playing in BLT, but also like just the quality of the games I felt like were so low. Like I feel like the competitiveness of mono was so low in this tournament compared to every other tier. I could say similar things about Ubers. However, I still would saw like some quality Ubers matches because there was me, Ham, Byron, MJ, like still a lot of good Ubers players. We didn't really see that same level of competition from Mono, in my opinion. Even like down the stretch in like these tiebreak games and stuff, I didn't feel like they were solid games. And that was pretty much it. I thought everything else about BLT was great. Like I was really happy with my draft. I was really happy with how my games went. I was undefeated in all the games that I uploaded, meaning all the games I cared about. The only game that I lost was against Skilos, where I used Mono Ice because the game, the series, or like that match / week didn't matter. Um, and so I felt really happy with my performance and my team's performance, especially like the draft, because I felt like I picked up a lot of good players that were kind of unknown or had like their proving ground was this BLT. And I like that about BLT still, that it's like, not like a super big tournament, but it's a tournament where like these somewhat unknown players, King Leo, like Silver, 25X, like you know, Kyther or Keeping It Icy can prove themselves against like some more known players like Jordan or myself or whatever, um, that have some like quote unquote clout or whatever. So I felt that was something that was still enjoyable about this BLT. And I'm looking forward to more room events, and I'm going to be keep making videos on those things. And so that's about it for this BLT season. And I hope you guys enjoyed these series of videos. And if you did, drop a like or comment or whatever else. And just I hope that I'll continue to be making these videos for the future leaderboard tournaments, TLT being the next one, and stuff like that. I will also probably be uploading non-BLT or tournament room related content somewhere like between now and TLT, because it's still going to be like at least a month before I upload any TLT content. So yeah, actually I might upload a video on about the TLT format because of some stuff related to the format might be changing. No promises though. That video will come out when it comes out. So, yep. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.